So I'm going to light this lavender vanilla candle. There we go. And I would like for you to, if you would like, to take some deep breaths. And as you inhale, just envision the divine white light of Source, which we are using this flame to symbolize, to flow throughout your entire body, from the crown of your head down through the soles of your feet into the ground below. And then as you exhale, if you like, you can pretend that you're blowing out the flame. And as you're blowing out the flame, you are releasing any negative energy, any things that are holding you back. And just take some gentle, deep breaths. And allow yourself to relax. So, the tools that I will be using for the readings this week. I have these plastic tarot cards. I like them a lot. The design on the back, the moon specifically, reminds me of the characters from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And then on the front of the cards, it's the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And I actually don't have another traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck at this time. I also want to... Hi Maria, thank you for coming. It's good to see you. It's good to have a sun sign that's a fire sign. Because sun is aligned with elemental fire. That doesn't mean that any of the sun signs are particularly bad, but that is one of the pluses of having a sun sign that is a fire sign. And over on the members side of the channel this week, this is the crystal that I will be using for the crystal scrying. It is a bloodstone, palm stone, and it has little tiny, if you can see, little tiny flecks of that red colored stone, the blood part of the bloodstone. So we're going to start with the fire sign of Aries. And Aries, if you would like to allow any issues you'd like to address in the reading, go ahead and set your intention for the reading and allow those things to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts very gently, be very compassionate with yourself regarding these issues. Remember that none of us are perfect, especially not me. And if these are things that cause you stress, just go ahead and breathe through that energy. Inhale and take in the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, you can just sigh out any of that tension or stress. Okay. So I'm going to lay out 5 cards here, and we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to do a guided meditation to transmute those energies. Interesting so far. Aries. Aries, I see. Well, let me write down your timestamp first before I get carried away. So, Aries, you have a lot of pentacles in your reading this week. So I can tell that you've got money on your mind. We do have 1 major arcana, and then we have a sword in the future. All of your cards are upright this week. So one thing that can indicate in your reading, excuse me, sorry, I have a bit of a frog in my throat. One thing that it can indicate when you have a lot of cards upright in your reading is that you are dealing with situations that are very clear-cut, possibly. There's a lot of minor arcana in your cards this week. 1 major arcana, 1 very big major arcana. We'll get to that in just a moment. But it can show that you're dealing with mundane matters. Right now, I will say right off the bat, this does look like a career or investment reading because there are so many pentacles. So let's get started. So the first card that we have is in the past, and this is the 8 of Pentacles. It's showing up in the upright. So this is a situation involving either long-term career prospects. It could be long-term investments, like a retirement account that is maturing. This person is very skilled at what they do. They have a lot of practice. It looks like they own their own business. 8 of Pentacles can be 8 streams of income. This is something that you are probably very established in. This particular field or the particular job that you have. You've had it for a long time. Also in the past, in the upright, we do have the Five of Pentacles. So this being in the upright, also in the past, shows me that this might be an ongoing situation, but it is something which has started. It's not something that just started, it's something that's been going on for a while. So the Five of Pentacles is a card about lack. It's a card about scarcity. We see these two figures in the foreground, and they do look very down on their luck, having to walk barefoot in the snow. Now, we do see this church window in the background, but a lot of times when dealing with religious organizations giving charity, there are conditions. And perhaps these two people either don't qualify due to certain conditions, or that they are unwilling to accept the help of the church for their own beliefs or reasons. It could also be that they're just not aware what this building is, or that they could possibly get help within. So the fact that we have this long-term career energy, but we also have this feeling of lack. It could be a job where you make a lot of money, but you don't get very much time off. Or it could be a job where you don't make enough to stay out of debt. And you have these accumulated debt cycles that you deal with, Aries, on a regular basis. So the next card that we'll be looking at has to do with the current situation. We know a bit about what you have experienced in the past, Aries, and it does look very much like a work situation, although pentacles can also represent the energy that you have put into situations. So if this is a love reading for you, this Eight of Pentacles can also represent something like a marriage that you've been in for maybe a decade or more. And the Five of Pentacles then would represent feelings of lack within that relationship. But it does very much look like an employment situation. So the card that we have for the current situation is the Death card. And in this particular case, well, in most cases, I think that the Death card is actually quite positive. We have this white rose here on the flag that death carries. Death comes for us all, and there is a purity to that. The process of the transformation of death is also a process of purification, where everything about a person's life is weighed out. Depending on what you believe, I do think that at the moment of death, and I certainly don't have empirical evidence for this, but I think that at the moment of death, you do go through a recounting of everything that has happened in your life from an outsider's perspective, that you're able to see the impact that you made on other people, whether that was good or bad, or if it was just neutral. So this white rose being that purity that is not tainted by it's just simply what happened. Your own perspectives might color it, but it is not an inherently biased thing that you're then going through. We do have the king, deceased, down here on the ground. And the Hierophant is seemingly bargaining with death, either for his own life or for the life of this woman here and her child. That is also possible. But of course, that's part of the purity of death, too. Cannot be bought, cannot be bargained with. Death comes for us all at our time. We do have, I guess not on this particular, oh, yes, okay, there it is. So if you look very closely here into the background, you can see the two towers that will appear later on the moon card. And at this particular time, we have the sun setting behind them in the west. And on the moon card, of course, we see the moon kind of framed between those two towers, showing the unknown journey which lies ahead. So there's going to have been some kind of transformation, either within the workplace or within this situation. It could have been a restructuring of your mutual funds, if we're talking about investments with this Eight of Pentacles. Whatever this was, if you perceived it to not be enough, that is something that will definitely be up for evaluation at this time, especially because of this transformation, Aries. And in fact, the next card that we have in your reading is the Seven of Pentacles, which is a card about evaluations. Of all the work that this person has put in, have they gotten out the crop that they desired, that they thought they were going to get, that they expected to get? And are they going to be able to command the fair market value for this crop that was expected? I think a lot of people do grow things in their gardens for fun, but a lot of people are doing this because they want to receive compensation for the effort that they're putting in growing food. And the Seven of Pentacles is a very agriculturally leaning card, but of course applies to all kinds of situations in life. This would be something that has developed over a long period of time, much like this Eight of Pentacles. And where we see in a reading that we have a higher number and then we go down to a lower number, sometimes that can indicate not necessarily backsliding, but we often do feel like we're taking a step back. This will be in the near future and augmenting that Seven of Pentacles. We have the Knight of Swords. The Knight of Swords is excellent house cleaning energy. The Knight of Swords is almost like the spring cleaning personified. That you're going to be able to clear things out of your life that are no longer serving you. And as such, the King of Swords, or the Knight of Swords, rather, I apologize for misspeaking there. The Knight of Swords also is about binary types of discernment between good and bad, such that there's not that finely honed discernment that we use to navigate the middle ground. This would be like making a list of pros and cons and tallying up and seeing which column is longer. That's Knight of Swords type discernment. So Aries, we do have a lot of money coming out in your reading this week. As I mentioned before, concerns about money. We don't see any particular outcomes, what we see is that you are really going to be taking stock of your own existence, energy out versus energy in, and determining it might be different for all of you because this is a general reading. So determining if this lifelong career that you have been taking part in that seems to leave you lacking, if that's actually the case, or if there are things that can be done to bring those aspects into balance, to bring everything closer into balance. So, Aries, for your guided meditation this week, what I would like to do is prepare you for this evaluation process. Almost like you are a job interviewer. So, whatever this job is, if you had to apply for it, or if you had to have a certain amount of money to invest in a savings account, or if there are certain stipulations on that, I want you to approach whatever situation that represents for you from the opposite perspective, from the person conducting the job interview and putting that interview out there, or from the perspective of the person at the bank or the other financial institution who's helping you to set up this particular account. Now, it has been quite some time probably since you embarked upon this particular career path, or since you set up that particular account. So don't think about it in terms of inflation. Don't think about it. Obviously, you're going to need to consider inflation a little bit when you start looking at your raises over the years. But what I'd really like for you to do is take all of these factors out of the context of the time in which the situation began and any context of the current situation that might cloud your judgment regarding certain situations. I say this because it's very easy to think about these things, Aries, in terms of, well, I don't really have it so bad. I know other people who have it much worse. And that's not the kind of attitude that I want you to have toward this particular situation. This is going to very much be about this evaluation, the work that you put in versus the payout that you get out, or the money that you have put into a savings account versus what you are getting out of it. Because we already know about this. We know that there are extenuating factors at this time. We know that things change and that a transformation is indeed taking place. But considering this long-term prospect, I want you to sit down and think about it, Aries, in terms of being the person who is either selling this account or who is trying to hire somebody for this job. And those two things seem a little bit different, but honestly, for this particular exercise, I don't think that it will be too different, that I can't apply it to both. So I want you to sit down and think about who the ideal candidate for your job would be. Now, maybe you consider yourself the ideal candidate for this job. which is fine, Aries. That is very acceptable, very normal. I want you to then consider all of the aspects of yourself and your skill set, particularly, that have made you the perfect candidate for this job. And I would like for you to list those things, either in your mind or on a piece of paper. Now, how much would you expect to pay somebody to do this? It is much easier now in this day and age to sit down and look online to see what the median salary in a given field is, to see what kind of salaries are being offered in that field. So you can, if you would like, you can pause the video and look that up now, or you can just keep all of these things in the back of your mind as you're doing this evaluation process. I want you to think also about what candidates might be available. Now, as I mentioned before, we're not really going to go into cost of living right now, because that would be tied up in the context of the time in which the job or the investment account was established, and also the current environment financially for everyone. So don't worry about the cost of living differential as much at this time. Just think about things about the ideal candidate, things about other candidates that you might consider for the job, even if they weren't at the top of that skill set. And we're doing this because it'll make it a lot easier for you to take part in this process later. So that is going to be the totality, Aries, of your particular guided meditation for the week, helping you along with the evaluation process. And I do wish you the best of luck in this endeavor. I can promise you that you're not alone at this time, Aries. So now we are going to move on to the fire sign of Leo. And I'm going to shuffle the cards. So Leo, if you would like to allow any concerns that you have that you'd like to settle with this reading to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts, if you would like to set an intention for the reading and allow those thoughts to just kind of gently simmer below the surface. I'm just going to shuffle the cards. If there's anything about these concerns that is stressing you out, Leo, go ahead and just breathe through those energies. As you inhale, take in the divine white light of Source. And then as you exhale, you can release any of that stress or tension that you're feeling and allow it to return to Source, where it will be transmuted. Oh, let me write down your timestamp quickly. So, Leo, we do have a couple. We do have a couple of major arcana cards in your reading. We have two queens, one upright and one in the reverse. We have a couple of reversals. So, a very average looking kind of a reading. I haven't decided yet if it's good or bad. The first card deals with issues from the past, or lack of issues, whatever the case may be. We have the Sun card here, and the Sun card has to do with success, has to do with everything being just fine. Everything's going great, right? Now, this card is in the upright in the past. So these conditions are going to continue into the current situation. And I'll bring out the next card in conjunction with the Sun card because we have one of the queens coming out as the Queen of Wands. So very much representing you, Leo, in this reading. You're coming out very strongly here with the Sun card, the Sun being your ruling luminary. And with the Queen of Wands, we in fact have the repetition of this symbolism of the sunflower depicted here on the Sun card. Lots of cats. The Queen of Wands is somebody who's very charming, very charismatic, very appealing to be around. When she shows up at a party, everyone knows that the good times have begun. So both of these cards are showing up in the upright and in the past for you, Leo. So these are conditions that you will be bringing into the current situation. And that current situation we have the Eight of Cups. And this card is showing up in the reverse. You may feel like you are going to have to abandon a project. You see here all of these cups. They've been meticulously stacked here in the foreground. But perhaps there weren't enough. Maybe the passion for the project was gone. Maybe the resources were not there to continue. And so you see this person who is walking away. It is not clear what they're walking toward. It is more clear. There's two things about the Eight of Cups that are very clear. One of which is that this person is unaccompanied. They have had to make this decision and leave on their own, possibly from the comfort of a group. Secondly, we see them leaving, but we don't see what they are walking towards. So there is uncertainty with this card. However, because this card is showing up in the reverse, in the current situation, this looks to me more like a close call. That perhaps there is something, could be a passion project, it could be a job, it could be a living situation. You may think that you're going to have to leave for any number of reasons. It is a general reading, so it could be for a variety of reasons, whether you feel like the resources aren't going to be there. The delicious resource pieces. But there might be something that comes through and makes it possible that you don't have to leave. Because that is showing up in the current situation in the reverse. So that is where we see the true implications of the reversal that are neither colored by our perspectives on the past nor our perspectives on the future. So the next card is in the immediate future, and it is reversed. We have the Queen of Swords showing up in the reverse. So the Queen of Swords can be an air sign person. That would be Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius. And Aquarius, of course, is interesting because that is the opposite sign to Leo. So if you are a Leo rising, for example, Aquarius would be your descendant sign in the house of other, which would be your 7th house, and have to do with your partnerships, and would be somebody who is very socially oriented within partnerships. But going back to the Queen of Swords here in the reverse, it could be that truths need to be hidden. It could be that the truth will end up coming out about something, but you don't see it yet, Leo. That is also a possibility. There's something to be said about the truth will set you free. She's got all these little butterflies, not just here on the crown, but also it looks like she's got clouds on her robe. She's got these little butterflies also on her throne. Now, the Queen of Swords doesn't necessarily have to be a feminine person. The Queen of Swords energy would be water of air. So we're looking at an emotional context for our rational thought with the Queen of Swords. A little bit like how we see an emotional context for rational thought with the King of Cups, interestingly enough. And the card that is also coming out with this queen in the future has very similar implications. We have the Temperance card. This time, we're looking at the element of fire in relation to our handling of our emotions. But the idea of the passion and the fire energy and the emotion with the water energy being able to create somehow a balance, which is very interesting because we would think about emotions. The opposite of emotion is not passion. The opposite of emotion could be seen as rational thought, right? Like what we're seeing with the Queen of Swords here. But the Queen of Swords is coming out reversed, and the Temperance card is coming out in the upright. And we see back here a beautiful glow, almost like what we see in the Sun card. So this 8 of Cups could also be that you're afraid you're going to have to leave the good things behind from the Sun card. And I think that is not the case. I think, too, that what we're being instructed to do is balance our emotions, not using our rational thought, but rather using our passions. What is it that you're very passionate about, Leo? Because that is what you need to be following at this time. That is what you need to follow rather than trying to rationalize your emotions with that Queen of Swords energy. So for your guided meditation this week, Leo, I would like for you to follow your passions. Follow your passions. Some of you, some of you might have specific projects that you are working on. That's kind of what I see here with this Eight of Cups, is the implication that a lot of you have these directed projects that you're very passionate about, that you would like to pursue. So I want you to envision. See, this person is walking toward a mountain here. And it is at night, so we don't really see the sun coming up over that mountain. But we could perceive this path winding toward the mountain on the Temperance card to be very similar to that on the Eight of Cups. And now, rather than thinking of this Eight of Cups energy, where we're looking at somebody walking away from a project that they have abandoned, I want you to perceive that the sun rising over this mountain depicts, could be rising, it could be setting. I'll leave that up to you. That depicts this sun card here, that thing you are truly passionate about. The sun card, of course, being the ruling luminary of Leo, and both the sun and Leo being native to the 5th house, where we talk about creativity and our passions. Can have to do with romance, can have to do with creative projects, can even have to do with children. But I want you to imagine this distant light on the horizon. What does it represent? Do you feel like every time you take a step toward it, it moves that much further away from you? How long does the path seem? Are there signs indicating the length of the road or the length of that distance along the way that you can clearly perceive? Is the terrain rocky and rough? Is it an elevated climb? Perhaps you even feel a bit like Sisyphus and can feel the boulder rolling over you from time to time. I want you to see things showing up along this path too, to help you. Maybe you have a car and you're able to travel in this car. Maybe you can even buy a ticket and take a train and pull up to the station in style and class, wearing a nice fancy hat like a beautiful Victorian lady. It's really up to you. But what I want for you to realize is that while the sun keeps its distance from us for good reason, we can indeed reach that horizon. And the sun is only representative of our goals. Remember that the next card after the Eight of Cups is the wish fulfillment of the Nine of Cups. And if you give up on this project now, that wish will remain unfulfilled. In fact, on the Temperance card, in the future, we have not one, but two extra chalices, which would take us to the end of that emotional cycle with the Ten of Cups. So I wouldn't worry too much about the practicality of these matters in the meantime. Nor would I feel like you have to give up on this project. It's important for you, Leo, at this time to stay the course. And we have the sun not just over here in the mountains, but also on the angel's diadem as well. It's very well usually is described as being Gabriel, but it could also be Michael because we're looking at the element of fire. So that is going to conclude your transmutational guided meditation for this week, Leo. If you are interested, I will be going over to the members side of the channel after this to do the crystal scrying with this beautiful bloodstone. And those videos are usually about 10 to 15 minutes long. And I do 4 per week on the weeks when I am doing the tarot readings. And then last week I did upload a video that was, I guess, about an hour long. And I did all 4 of the elements crystal scrying for each. But of course, I want to remind you that your presence on the channel is greatly appreciated in no matter what form it takes. So now we're going to move on to the sign of Sagittarius, who just showed up in the Leo reading as the Temperance card. So maybe some of you have quite a bit of fire in your chart. Sagittarius, if you would like, you can go ahead and set your intention for the reading. And allow any concerns that you have that you would like to address to rise up to the forefront of your thoughts. And if these are things that are stressful for you, I would like for you to breathe through that tension and anxiety. As you inhale, I want you to draw in the divine white light of Source, going from the crown of your head down through your body, through the soles of your feet, into the ground below. And then as you exhale, you can just sigh out any of that tension or stress, and it will return to Source, and it will be transmuted. All right, so I'll deal the cards, and then I will write down the timestamp for you. Interesting. So, Sagittarius, you have 3 major arcana in your reading. two are reversed, and in the future. And then you have an ace, and you have a queen. And I will get into the reading. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but you have the Queen of Pentacles showing up in your past, and her major arcana analog, the Empress, showing up reversed in the future. So this should be a very interesting reading for you this week, Sagittarius. So as I mentioned, the first card that I have for you this week is the Queen of Pentacles. And while we're over here, I want to show you this little bunny rabbit in the corner. It kind of blends in with some of the other colors on the card. But the Queen of Pentacles is about fertile proliferation of resources. This is water of earth energy. So she has this pentacle on her lap, but she is able to plant the seeds to grow more pentacles. She has a lot of plants surrounding her, all these vines, some flowers over here. And that is why I say that the Queen of Pentacles is the minor arcana analog to the Empress card, because both of them are very occupied with this idea of gestation, fertile proliferation, there being a fertilization period, and then it takes some time for those resources to grow and develop, or that project to grow and develop, or of course also the potential for pregnancy and having a child. In this particular case, this could have to do with a child, or it could have to do with financial resources and some kind of project that you're working towards. There are not other pentacles here to indicate certainly that this is a financial reading or that it is not a financial reading. All the cards are fairly mixed, and we do have, as I mentioned, 3 major arcana. So that can indicate major life changes ahead of you. The other card that I have for your past position, Sagittarius, is the Ace of Swords. And the Ace of Swords is very similar because it is the Ace of Spades, basically. It's very similar to the Death card and to the Tower card. Hi, Jason. We're on Sagittarius. Thank you for coming. It's good to see you. However, the difference between the Ace of Swords and cards like the Death card or the Tower card. Hi, Divine Nation. Thank you for coming. I love all your emojis. Is that you are the one driving the force behind this change, Sagittarius. That's what we see here with this crown. That crown represents your sovereignty over this change. You could even see the Ace of Swords as being the sword that you wield to effect that change. And it can be very drastic. There doesn't seem to be too much of a difference between this card showing up in the upright and this card showing up in the reverse. And I think the reason for that is because you're in the driver's seat, Sagittarius. This is the element of air coming through in its highest purity. And it is also an active element and an active card at that. So, where we have the two passive energies of water and earth embodied in the Queen of Pentacles, here in the Ace of Swords, we have that pure elemental air active energy that is going to then drive mobility forward. So the next card that I have for you, Sagittarius, and honestly, your reading this week could encompass so many different kinds of situations. So I'll try to keep it as general as I can. It doesn't feel like I'm talking to somebody specific. It feels like a lot of you are going through things with your long term employment, specifically people who are small business owners, because, of course, the Queen of Pentacles and the Ace of Swords would be very much that kind of energy. Somebody starting their own business. And we do have the Lover's card coming out. So, it could be a small business. It could even be something like in vitro fertilization and deciding to adopt, deciding to have kids outside of a relationship. And now we have this Lover's energy coming in, which is not just about a potential relationship between two people, regardless of their gender, regardless of whether or not you consider it sanctioned by the higher power. It's about choice. The Lover's card is also associated with your oppositional sign of Gemini. So if you're a Sagittarius rising, for example, then Gemini is going to be in your 7th house. It's going to be your descendant in the house of other and have to do with your partnerships and things like that. So that's very interesting also for a Sagittarius reading. The Lovers is a lot like the kind of choice that you might see with the Two of Swords, where the two swords look very similar, could be pretty much identical for all intents and purposes. But in order to wield one of those swords effectively, you do have to choose between them and choose one over the other. And that is very similar with the Lover's card. Sometimes this is depicted as one person choosing between two other people. On this particular card, we see Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and they're being instructed by this angel not to eat of the fruit. We also have this tree that is on fire behind Adam, and sometimes God does communicate in biblical scenarios as a burning bush. So you could be receiving some messages at this time as to which path, Sagittarius, will be the best one for you. Whether that is inside a relationship or whether it has to do with other possibilities that are ahead of you. So the next two cards are going to be your future placements. And both of these cards are reversed. So they could show two different alternative paths that you could take. One of those cards is the Hierophant. And I think that these cards are showing up in the reverse in the future. I'll just go ahead and show you because I did mention already that the Empress was in this reading. These cards showing up in the reverse because perhaps they are two possibilities and neither one is fully coming into focus yet because you can't have both of them. That's a possibility. It is also possible that one would lead to the other, or that the terms by which these things might come to pass is not yet apparent, such that these might be two stops along the same path, depending on the choice that you make, but that they're not mutually exclusive. So there are a few different ways that this reading could proceed. And of course, it being a general reading, as I mentioned, I will try to keep it as general as possible. It doesn't feel like a very specific reading. The Hierophant can be a card of marriage. We do have the lilies of purity here and the poppies of remembrance depicted on the two garments. Lilies can also be associated with death, as can the poppies here. We have the crossed keys holding the keys to the kingdom, and the crossed keys also being part of esoteric knowledge that the clergy would have held, particular rather than the contents of other grimoires, if that makes sense. Not necessarily that they were of a more Christian bent, because there's all kinds of stuff in all kinds of grimoires. You'll just have to read them and find out. But that the keys represent also that esoteric knowledge, as well as the keys to the kingdom of heaven. The Hierophant acts as an intermediary between the higher power and the populace at large. And because of this, the Hierophant is Taurus's card in the major arcana, according to what I use, which is the Golden Dawn correspondences. However, because of the role that the Hierophant plays, he would very much be aligned with the ideas of the 9th house, which Sagittarius does rule. So there are also ways that you can tie in that idea, the idea represented by the archetype of the Hierophant. You could think of that in the terms of the 9th house and in Sagittarius. However, this card is showing up in the reverse. I do think it's possible that somebody out there is very keen to get pregnant, and that for that person, this leads to this. We have the marriage leading to the Empress and pregnancy and motherhood. But that's going to be based on a choice that you make at this time. And of course, I don't really strictly read as love readings, regardless of whether it very much looks like a love reading. But I think for some of you, that is going to be the case. In other cases, you might be a spiritual leader. Oh, wow. That's really cool. And thank you for letting me know that it's you. I was wondering. But yes, so this could very much be the energy of starting a spiritual path in the public eye. It could be a YouTube channel. It could be joining the clergy, going to seminary school. All of those different things. It could be getting Reiki certified. And in that case, I would read this Lover's card as much more like a choice that you are making in regards to your relationship with the higher power. Because they're going to be telling you what to do. And that's what they were telling Adam and Eve in the garden. They were trying to give them a lot of guidance. And of course, as grateful as I am for my own free will, I don't think it turned out the best for them. But sometimes the sacrifices of the ancestors are things that end up working out for their descendants. And really, if you talk about the story of the Garden of Eden, as I mentioned, I think in I don't remember if it was the Leo reading or the Aries reading, but I was mentioning how I do believe that after you die, you go through your what some people call Akashic records. You go through your entire life from an outside perspective so that you're able to see the impact that you truly had in this world. And part of that kind of system of beliefs is that we come here to learn things, that this is kind of like a school, not strictly speaking, and certainly not in the same context as our educational system here in America, for example. But that part of Adam and Eve leaving the garden was actually to pursue that spiritual knowledge. And so that might be the choice that you're making at this time, Sagittarius. And now we're going to talk about the Empress card finally. So the Empress is associated with the planet Venus. Oh, Maria, that's amazing. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling us. I think that's really wonderful. I am so glad to hear that, honestly, because I think that the world needs more meditation and more of that kind of community where we're coming together to promote the best in each other. And both of you, Divine Nation holds, and Maria, like if you want to drop some links in the comments or in the chat, I invite you to do so. I think I have it set so that the chat doesn't replay. But if you wanted to put that down in the comments, I think that you should. I would love to know more about it. So Venus, outside of the divine feminine of the Empress. Yes, of course. I'm so glad to see you guys every time you show up. And I'm so glad to hear about your endeavors. I think that's really wonderful. Venus is also associated with the North Star. And through that association with Lucifer. So there's, as I mentioned, Sagittarius. I'm getting goosebumps now. There are a lot of different ways this can go. It's really up to you. And it really is that ninth house Sagittarius trait of elevation of the self and spiritual matters. So the Empress can be, circling back around again to the beginning, this endeavor which needs to be nurtured, needs to be fostered and watered and allowed to grow. The two elements associated with the Empress would then be the signs ruled by Venus. So we have Taurus, which is earth sign energy, and we have Libra, which is air sign energy. We don't really think about the air sign aspects of the Empress. But there is a lot to do with partnerships there. Obviously, the divine feminine's role in the structure of a relationship. But the feminine being, interestingly enough, the passive aspects of that relationship, as opposed to how the divine masculine would be active and thus associated more with the air sign energy. So a bit of alchemy as far as that's concerned too. Air and earth are kind of the opposites, just like fire and water are opposite. because air is so mobile and Earth is so stationary. Oh, I'm happy to do so, and I'm so glad that you're here. So, she's got all of these stars in her crown, showing that her mind is on those elevated things. And a lot of ancient goddesses were depicted as being the night sky. So tying in that kind of feminine energy as well. A lot of these goddesses of the night sky were very fertile, and either the stars were their children or they did have other children who were also deities. And of course, down in the front on the card, we have this beautiful wheat field showing that fertility. So there's a lot ahead of you, Sagittarius. And I think to kind of transmute this reading and bring it forward, we might do something a little bit like what we did with the Leo reading. But in this case, we're going to be headed towards a sacred temple or a place of worship. And what that represents to you, Sagittarius, is entirely up to you. It could be a beautiful overlook that you like to go to and commune with spirit. It could be a specific temple. It could be the Parthenon. It could be the Pantheon. It could even be a secular structure that is very old. But you will, as long as you walk towards it. So we're going to start our journey at night. Maybe it's a little bit chilly. It's dark, but we do have stars shining brightly overhead to light the way. Every single star in the sky is visible because it is so dark. But you trust. You know where you are going. You are not entirely certain what lies on your path, but you know the eventual outcome. Just like many ancient societies would navigate by the stars, you know which way to go. Perhaps you are following the North Star. Perhaps you are following the constellations as they change by seasons. Maybe you even know about Bufo. But you look up at the sky and you walk in the direction that the stars are guiding you. It is a comfortable walk. You are not tired. You are not weary. Because Source perpetually feeds your energy and guides your purpose. You have plenty of water, plenty of food to eat. Perhaps, Sagittarius, you even have an equine companion. Horses are very smart. As you walk, you draw closer to what you know to be your destination. It is now the darkest hour of the night. Perhaps you begin to have doubts. Perhaps you wonder if you will ever reach your destination or if it even still exists. Maybe there are others also on your path, and you see them able to move much more quickly than you, or much more directly. Maybe you are even checking your social media and see these people taking pictures of themselves already at the temple. You must not be distracted by the progress of others, because more than any other path you take, this is one where we are all supporting each other. So now, a little bit of light is peeking up over the horizon. You see it far off in the distance, that first rosy glow of dawn. The morning star is fleeing now, and the sun rises higher in the sky, illuminating against a beautiful backdrop your destination. When you reach this destination, you know that your true journey has but yet begun. For what you will be working on there is a task unto itself, and the journey to get there is just the first stage. Perhaps you decide to take a break before you enter the final leg of your journey. Refresh yourself. Get some sleep. Drink some water. Eat some food. Caring for the vessel that carries you. And finally, you find yourself upon the steps into the inner sanctum. And you know that this leg of your journey is complete. All of your friends greet you there, and they show you into the temple, where you are able to begin your true work, Sagittarius. So that is going to conclude the Sagittarius reading for this week. I want to thank all of you who have joined us for the live chat today. I'm always so glad that you're here. I will be going over to the members side of the channel to do some crystal scrying with this bloodstone. If that interests you, you are cordially invited. But of course, your presence here on the channel is greatly appreciated, no matter what form it takes. And until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful evening, a good night. Oh, Maria, you're so welcome. A great week, a wonderful month, and an excellent 2022.